Today we're with Luc Stout. Luc's an intern in the camp internship program at Word of Life Camps, New York. He's also a student at Anchor Christian University. But wanted to catch up with Luc, get a little bit of a beat on where he's at, where he's coming from, where he's headed, and just kind of get a picture of what God's doing there. So Luc, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. So, and I know you're busy because the op cycle at Word of Life camps is especially, you're going into snow camp time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And you're getting hammered with snow at the same time, which I guess that's
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
But fill us in a little bit about kind of locate us, your background, where you grew up, how you ended up at Word of Life, what that connection looked like.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really an interesting thing for me because I was I was just born into this, really. My dad works for Word of Life. He works in the international ministries department. So for most of my life, honestly, it didn't really have a choice, but it was just kind of like written in the stars that I was just like, I was going to come to the Word of Life Bible Institute, at least for a year. It's just what my parents desired. They raised us to love the Lord. I accepted Christ at a young age, but honestly didn't really decide to truly follow him in all my ways until late in high school. So I came to the BI just because out of obligation. Parents just said, "Hey, we pay for at least your first year if you go to the BI." And so my siblings before me, my older sister, older brother, they both went to the BI. So I just kind of knew that was going to happen. And I went into the BI just with a mindset of like, I'm going to make a lot of good friends and have a good time. But the Lord obviously had different intentions, different plans for my life. So I came for my first year. First semester, I just goofed off. I didn't really buy into the material or the professors or the program at all. And then this time 2 years ago, snow camp comes around. Second semester starts, and it's really in the heat of ministry where the Lord reveals to you where your heart's desires are and where you need to grow in. And snow camp came around this time 2 years ago, and that's when I decided that I was going to stop messing around with my faith and I was going to truly make it my own, stop piggybacking off of my parents' faith, and that I was going to live a fully sold out life for Jesus and his cause. And so at that time, 2 years ago, I decided I was going to come and attend my second year of the Word of Life Bible Institute. And I was going to finish the whole program out. And that's when the Lord really started to make my path more clear, because in high school, I had no direction. I felt like I had no purpose. I had a lot of identity issues. And the Lord really used camp ministry to show me what he has desired for my life. And it's very clear now, or else I wouldn't be doing a camp ministries internship, that the Lord has desired for me to go out and make disciples of my generation and the future generation to come. And I'm stoked. I'm loving life right now. I love serving the Lord where I'm at. And I'm in my first year of my internship. I finished 2 years of the Bible Institute, and now I'm a student at Anchor, and I'm just loving the material that I'm getting to do, and I'm loving the ministry that I'm getting to serve. And this week we got around 250 campers coming in about 2 hours. So really pumped. Super excited. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Hopefully that answers the question. But
yeah, absolutely. So, and thanks for that. I know, and thanks for taking time today of all days. I know, we trying to kind of get this in there. But as I don't know how much you know about like my story, but I was a ministry kid, grew up in a youth ministry home, doing,
really?
Then also the wilderness ministry thing. So I totally get the way I put it is, in a lot of ways, I felt growing up like I was a trailer bouncing behind my dad's ministry, and you're hitched on and there's not a whole lot you can do. And, you just kind of bump along that road. And similarly, like when I finished high school, I was not in any way aimed at, okay, what does God want for my life? I was more like, okay, I did this thing. I have a vision, or at least a direction. I'm gonna have to figure this out. And a little later than in your story is when the Lord just kind of grabbed mine and said, okay, here's what we're doing. And I was like, oh, okay. So for you, if you don't mind me asking, and feel free to say buzz
Sure.
off, but what was it at that snow camp that captured your heart, your mind, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's easy to get caught up, especially in intense seasons of ministry. I think you can easily get caught up in the emotion of things, the emotion of decisions. Like there's a really insane message going on, and then the pianist comes up and hits those right chords, and it just really gets you going. It opens the floodgates, and you're just like, oh, like I need to fix my life, and it's really easy to get caught up in those intense moments of emotion, I would say. And I'm a very emotional person, and so I think a lot of the times in my life I was making very emotional, quick decisions based off of what felt right, but I wasn't actually taking time with the Lord in the quietness of my own heart, the quietness of even just in like a physical place, like just being quiet and being still with the Lord. That principle was very strange to me. And so if you've ever been to a Word of Life camp, you just know that it's like go, 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 go. And if you've ever been a BI student at Word of Life, you just know like your schedule's packed and you have a lot of responsibilities. And I was working a position called program, which is platform ministry. So I'm on stage, I'm talking, I'm the energy of camp, I'm playing games, and I was caught up in a lot of private sin during my first year of the BI. Sin that just wasn't, you couldn't tell I was struggling with unless you saw me in private, and when you're on platform ministry and you're sinning privately, it eats you up so much because we know that the Lord has a higher standard for those who are put in front of people and that are responsible for being public leaders. And so that just naturally will eat you away. And so during my first year, I'm constantly going up in front of people, having to present the gospel with my actions. And meanwhile, privately, I'm living as if the gospel means absolutely nothing to me. And privately, I'm spitting at the feet of Jesus. I'm the biggest hypocrite you'll ever see. And so that was eating me alive. Just like the Holy Spirit was really working in my heart, convicting me like, Luke, you're up in front of people and you're supposed to be this public leader, but meanwhile, you're not even worshiping me in your private. In the mundane, you're not even worshiping me. I wasn't waking up early and getting in his word. I wasn't giving the Lord the respect that he deserved from me. And then at the same time, I was publicly trying to get other teenagers to follow Jesus, but I wasn't following Jesus privately. And so it was just eating me alive. And I walked into the office of someone that I look up to, and I confessed, I was just like, I'm dead right now. Like, I'm tired. Like, it's crazy how the Lord physically exhausts you when you are spiritually drained as well. Like, you could be physically exhausted but spiritually full, and it won't hit you the same. But when you are physically exhausted and spiritually exhausted, you're a zombie walking around. And so I walk into this guy's office, I confess everything, just like James tells us to, and he just looks at me and says, "Hey, the Lord accounted for this. You're good. You just like in John, when Jesus looks at the adulterous woman, he just says, 'Get up and sin no more.' Like, you can move on from this. Like, salvation gives you life." And so at that moment, I realized like my sin and my circumstances shouldn't be how I interpret God, but I should interpret my circumstances through God. So it was just like I honestly can't explain, like I couldn't tell you like a specific like moment, but definitely just the Lord like chipped away during that season, because in intense ministry the Lord he's always doing that with his leaders, especially. I'm sure you can attest to that. Just the constant chipping away of sin and hidden distractions maybe in your heart that maybe are like my boss always says, like blind spots, like um stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say there's like a oh aha, but it was definitely like a progressive, like him working on my heart. So
Well, it's interesting because you very, I think, powerfully describe the experience of leaders and ministry leaders. And there's this interesting knife edge of that opportunity. Like you said, there's exhaustion, that there's a type of exhaustion that happens when you're drained and pouring out and trying to,
mhm,
carry the yoke that Jesus says is light, but when you're carrying it
yeah,
on your own, it doesn't work so well. But at the same time, there's this compulsion, this energy that comes from the opportunity to carry that yoke when he's pulling it with you, and you're kind of in that sync. And so there's not really any in between, like in the experience of ministry. Like you don't get, it's not like you can find that line in between and straddle it. It either is or it isn't in one of those things. And so that's awesome. That's amazing. So I'm curious then, after that transition, taking that step, unloading that yoke and aligning. And even, I think it's amazing that you're in a place where you can walk into leadership and
yeah,
not get the shame. You get the like, okay, like let's bring Jesus in and what he provided, and let's walk in that. That's who we are. That's what we preach, and the gospel message we carry. When you transition back into your classes at the BI after that, how did that pivot change your perspective, the value, the experience of the BI from there forward?
yeah. It's really crazy because I already mentioned a little bit how intense just Word of Life is in general, like the schedule of things. As soon as snow camp ended, like we went right into a missions conference, and that's just all like Great Commission. That's all just like checking your heart and checking your priorities of your life. Matthew 6 type of messages where it's just like, where are your treasures? Where are you storing them? And so it's just like the Lord like used a really intense season of ministry and then a really intense conference to just back it everything up that he was trying to instill in my life. So we had a conference, missions conference. Then we had this class. Well, we had OAE, open air evangelism, and so it's just like the Lord went from ministry to Great Commission to actually sending me physically out to like the streets of New York City to share my faith, where I had to physically demonstrate that my faith is my own with my words and my actions, um, to a bunch of strangers in the subways of New York City. And like I think after that like aha moment of my life and my personal relationship with Jesus during snow camp, I was able to sit in these classes and go, okay, Lord, like I understand that I'm never gonna be perfect. Like that's not my job, but my job is to give you my effort. My job is to give you my availability. And so I think once I realized that the Lord is not seeking perfection from us, but he's seeking our availability for him to work through our lives. I was able to sit in these classes and go, okay, if I bomb this class, well, maybe it means that I didn't pay attention, and that's bad. But um, the Lord is not caring about my like physical like grades. He cares about where my heart is. He's looking at my heart, and only He can see my heart. And so I was sitting. I think I had a renewed spirit while I was sitting in those classes. Second semester, I was like, okay, like zone in, do your absolute best, Luke, because I'm a naturally just a terrible student. Like I had the worst ADHD ever. And so I was just like, I think I would just say like peace, because I knew like okay, like this is good. Like this is good for me. This is good for my soul. It's not right. It's like, it's kind of hard sometimes when you're studying God's word in an education setting, because you can so easily um, forget that studying God's word is good for your soul. Like
Mm.
um, in Matthew, I think chapter 10, or yeah, talking about how like he gives rest to our souls. Like I think sometimes I forget that when I'm studying God's word for a grade, he's it's stuff that he like this the content that I'm studying is good for my soul.
Mm.
It's going to give me a degree in the end, but it's good for my soul. And so I think I had that renewed spirit sitting in classes like, no, this is good for my soul. Like, this is good for me, like stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I don't know if
it's
that
interesting
answers.
because I remember being a Bible college. I was at Bible college freshman sophomore year. What was then Baptist Bible College, now Clark Summit University. And without getting into the whole story, I was there not because that was my vision for my life. It was kind of the default place while I was figuring out what in the world am I built for and where am I headed. Because my dad taught there, free tuition, all that, and it was part of my journey. But I remember sitting in those classes in a place where I wasn't really locked into what's God doing. I was more like, okay, how do I get my agenda rolling? And all of what was coming at me felt like work. It felt like a chore. It felt like
Mm-hmm.
something to get through and whatever. But when you pivot to that place where you're like, oh, there's not just a purpose for this. There's something that I gain out of it in soul and spirit, and I've got a place to plug it in and use it in my own life and other people's life. It just changes the dynamic entirely. And so I remember being in that space where, there's a whole bunch of students on the Bible college or the Institute campus that are like, that feel the same way. And there's kind of that group think of like, they're doing this stuff to us. They're dumping this stuff on us. And then there's that core that the Lord's ignited, and they're just going after it, and they don't make any sense to the other group. And so you
Yeah,
just kind of have these
yeah,
two cultures happening. And I'm sure
yes,
that's true, in
no,
your
yes,
experience as well. So, and it marked me, a lot once that corner turned, when it got into the education space and designing things and all that, asking that question, like, how do you highlight the value and bring that forward instead of just the process itself? So, which we'll talk about in a minute here. So you finished while you're at the Bible Institute 2 years. You served in camp because that's part of the gig. When you're at the Bible Institute, you have rhythms. The reason it's packed is because it's school and ministry,
ministry,
which
yeah,
bring those two together. But as you're going through year 2 and thinking about, okay, what next? What was your thought process as it relates to jumping into the internship and then camp specifically at that point?
yeah, yeah. So honestly, I have lived the last 3 years of my life with the mindset of like 1 year at a time. Like I have been unable to like think too far ahead, just because of where the Lord has put me. Because the Lord has kind of like worked on one major issue of my life, like 1 year at a time. And so He's kind of just like giving me, hey, this is where you're at for this year, and I'll tell you when you need to know like where you're going next. And so like halfway through first year, He told me I was gonna do second year, and then second year, I get halfway through second year, I'm like, okay, I know one thing is like up until that point in my life, I didn't have like these like crazy things like most high schoolers have, like, oh, I want to be this or I want to be that. I had like nothing going on for me. I just kind of like living in the best way I can say it. And then the second year comes around, I'm like, okay, like, Lord, you want me in full time ministry. If you didn't want me in full time ministry, you would have put something else on my heart or on my mind, because you're not putting anything on my heart or mind right now. But the one thing that I know that you've given me a desire for is camp. And you've given me passion for it, because I know when camp season rolls around, I'm going crazy. Like, I love it. I love it so much. And I have a strong, fiery passion for seeing high schoolers come to know Jesus. And so, second year comes, And I get snow camp, summer camp. I'm just like, all right, like, this is the one thing in my life that brings me so much joy, just. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to take a step of faith and I'm going to follow this right here. I'm going to follow this desire. I'm going to follow this like one thing in my life that I know that the Lord has put on my heart. And Word of Life has this Camp Ministries internship, and it's perfect. Like, I get to stay in the same place that I've been the last 2 years. I get to be around people that I love. I didn't have to leave my discipler, which was awesome. I'm getting to be around him for another year. Like, I get to be around the bosses that I've had the last 2 years. So it's like, it was like a no-brainer. It's just like the Lord opened this door for me to do something that I love all year round, and do it in a different facet as a leader now. So I'm getting to lead the people the position that I once was in, So it's a blessing, and it's pretty cool how the Lord, I love control. Like, I want to know 2 years, 3 years in advance. But it's pretty cool how, like, the Lord looks at me and goes, like, Luke, like, I'm just asking to be faithful right now, and trust that I'm going to have you covered because I got you. Like, it kind of like remain faithful here, and I'm going to open the doors for you when they need to be open.
Awesome.
So far, that's how it is. Yeah, that's how it's done.
Yeah, I can connect with the idea of wanting to, see the runway and then him saying, like, just hit the throttle.
Yeah.
So you're just like, all right, here we go.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about from your perspective. We had a conversation with Tommy several weeks ago, whatever, and got some perspective on the internship from his end of things. But from your perspective, what is the experience of the internship like? Like, what's happening? What's what's awesome? What's challenging, etc.
Yeah. If I could like put the internship in like one sentence, I would say like it's expanding my tool belt for ministry, because I'm doing things that like I never would have thought were like important to know for ministry in a sense. So my day-to-day changes every single day. Like, anyone watching this that like is in full-time ministry, like, you're probably gonna throw a nice little chuckle in at this moment. But like, I'm doing things that I thought like how does this revolve around ministry? Like, I'm wiping down inflatables with bleached rags, like, for the glory of the Lord. Like, I'm like calling youth and calling like churches and just like having conversation, and like I'm so humbled because I'm truly understanding through this internship, like, ministry is not always platform. Ministry is not always preaching a nice solid message, or doing exactly what you thought the Lord gifted you in. Ministry is the mundane. Ministry is sometimes the things that no one wants to do. And so I'm expanding my tool belt, things that I don't know how to do. This year I learned how to attach a trailer and park a trailer. Like, I'm like, these are things that like I never knew how to do, but here I am attaching a hitch to a trailer, like. So yeah, I'm learning a ton. So it's been a journey. It's been amazing though. Like, the people I get to work with, the people mainly I would say, like, the people that I'm getting to rub shoulders with it's invaluable.
Yeah. So, and if I remember correctly, one of the responsibilities you have is to you have a small group of first year BI students. Is that right?
Yeah.
That you engage regularly. What's that look like?
So I'm leading a D group, so discipleship group, and me and my boys, we meet once every week on Wednesday nights. Sometimes it looks like being in this very room that I'm sitting in, just opening the Bible and talking through a couple of verses. But like, for example, this last Wednesday, I was hanging out in their dorm room playing some Madden, like playing some video games with them. Honestly, that's been a really humbling experience too, because I'm like their same age. I'm only like a year or two older than them. And I'm trying to give them life advice on things that sometimes I don't even have the best advice on, because I'm currently working through these things. But yeah, very humbling experience leading those boys, because I'm having to sit there and as I'm speaking to them, I'm speaking about problems that I'm currently facing as well.
Yeah.
And I feel very inadequate, but the Lord uses the foolishness of man to teach people things that you never thought you could teach. So I'm very humbled, and I know that I don't deserve it, but the Lord is gracious and He loves me and He gives me things that I don't deserve. So it's been a really fun experience getting to just live life alongside of them. My dad, um, my dad is a big influence in my life on discipleship, and something he's always said is like, if you think discipleship is having a meal with someone, then you're wrong. Like, it's more than just that. Like, it's life. So I'm trying to live by that. I'm trying to just hang out with them, be there, be someone that's present. So if that's the least that I can offer, then that's what I'm gonna do. So it's been awesome.
Awesome. So you're getting a full range of experience in the internship, from trailer hitching to discipleship to
Yeah.
platform to, all of those things, which, I used to run wilderness trips, May and September, we'd run leadership trips up in Canada. And it was always funny to me that people that would be on those trips are like, man, your job is amazing, as though that experience was the thing I got to do 52 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 of the 50 weeks, right? The other 50 weeks are, more like office, 4 walls, et cetera. But, so people don't see all of that stuff, to your point, but you're gaining kind of that experience from not just the process side, but how it connects to the purpose, which I think is essential. Now, one of the things that's true about Word of Life internships, whether it's at camps, the international churches in the network, et cetera, is that they require you to, you're done with 2 years at the Bible Institute. They require you to finish college, like be enrolled, headed towards a degree. So you get a decision. And there are several different universities that give attractive options, let's say, in different ways to Word of Life interns. Talk a little bit about your thought process kind of heading into that with the options in front of you and how you ended up doing Anchor.
Of course. It's pretty simple. Tommy Sewall, love that man. He's been a massive influence in my life. He's a key figure in what I would say, like, trusting leadership. He knows how to champion his people well, and so he trusts people, and so he's entrusted me with a lot of random things over the time of knowing each other. And so that has just opened up conversations of just having normal life conversations rather than ministry stuff. And as I was approaching, like, figuring out further how I was going to further my education, initially I was going to pick this one school that had just an attractive financial offer. And I was just looking at it. I was like, I just don't know what degree I would like. And if they're not flexible and my job is just crazy, like this internship is wild. Like yeah, it's just crazy. This internship is the hours that we're pulling, and the schedule is just always moving around. We have 4 different seasons of ministry that happens. We got reverb season, we got snow camp season, we got OAE and international trips, and then we got summer camp. And so I just knew that I needed something that was going to work with me. And Tommy and I were just having a discussion one day at lunch, and he was like, hey man, let me just give you a suggestion, because I was talking about this other school. He's like, Anchor is going to work with you. And then he threw out that Dwight would be a professor, and I had Dwight as a professor for my second year, and it happened to be that he was one of my favorite professors my whole second year, and one of the most influential classes that I had. And to me, as soon as he said Dwight, I was just like, wow, like I was basically already signed up in my mind. I was like, yes, like, if you're telling me that I'm gonna get to learn from Dwight all year and just interact with him, like, sign me up. Like, I'm down. And then he mentioned that it's also very flexible. And so that was just like, as someone who's naturally more of an unorganized person, and um, honestly, I've been like pretty bad with just like school my whole life. It was just like nice to know that like I was gonna do an internship that was crazy, and I had also had a school that would work with me because they're more interested in my ministry than they are in just getting numbers on a page. So that was really encouraging to know that the heart behind the people at Anchor was that they wanted to see my ministry excel. They didn't want to put more stuff on my plate so that my ministry would be hindered. Like they want my ministry to be successful, and they're championing me. They're championing my ministry, and also helping me further my education. So it's been awesome. Like I've absolutely loved it, every part of it. So it's been super
So
cool.
Tommy sat down and said, here's the dream. Here's the promise of Anchor Christian University, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're like, man, that sounds pretty good. I think that'll work
No, yeah. It
with
was
who I
really
am,
easy.
where I'm headed. So here's the
Yeah.
question. Was the promise valid or not?
Oh,
because you're now into it.
No, like I was talking to my dad, and I was like kind of like explaining like my day to day with this program, and I was explaining to my dad, like, I was, dang, like that's awesome. Like you're telling me you get to interact with your professor whenever you want and ask questions, and you can email them and just say like, hey, like I got this coming up. Is this good if this comes in a little late? Or you like it was just like I think feeling like a human being is one of the most important things that any like organization or like ministry could ever do for people. Like something I always tell to my team of guys that I'm working for Snow Camp is like the least you can do as like a human like human to human connection thing is just know someone's name. Like that is the most bare minimum thing you can do to make someone feel like seen. But like when it comes to school, like the fact that like I'm known by my professors and stuff, and I can hold conversations about the things that I'm going through in life. Like for example, super simple thing that I really appreciate. I write journals every week. I write these journals out and I submit them to Dwight. Dwight reads them and then writes feedback on my journals about my life experience, and then always ends up saying something along the lines of like, hey man, like this seems like really tough. Call me if you want to talk about it. Like what? Like what professor wants to phone call their student because they read in their journal that they're struggling with blah 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 blah. So really cool. Really, really cool.
Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar with Anchor and the learning blueprint format that all the courses are set up with, journaling is one of the rhythms where you highlight what I call the collision points between what's actually happening and the content. So that your context, what's going on in your real life, real world, in the content, to highlight where's the heat of learning. Where's that content finding value and pressing in. And so it's part of that regular rhythm and conversation. And actually, the last podcast, we actually just pushed it up today, was with Dr. Dwight Peterson. And we're talking a lot about that,
Legend.
like the difference between classroom and the opportunities there and this real live environment stuff, and really pressing into what God's doing, which at the end of the day, I mean, he created you with potential and a purpose, and you're on this path, right? And moving along that. And that really, from an education standpoint, is even to your point, it's not about just crossing the finish line and getting the piece of paper. The piece of paper should indicate that you've grown in that purpose and that path. And so that's just the whole process is set up for that. And that's part of, the schedule thing, saying, okay, we can either impose a schedule on you that's rigid and pulls you away from what God's doing and all of those things that you're the context you're learning in and where you're growing, or B, we can take the energy and effort to walk into your space, say what's God doing there, and coach into that. And the system's just set up for that because we believe that's most productive. And ultimately, we believe our job is to steward part of your journey that that we get the opportunity to walk into. It's a privilege for us. So, and Dwight is like the granddaddy master of all that stuff. I say granddaddy because he's got gray hair, because, you know.
Oh, man. Dwight, I love you, man. You're the best ever.
There we go. I'll make sure that he sees this part of it so that, you know, yeah, anyway. So thinking, just kind of wrapping, we'll head towards the finish line, because I know you got a lot going on, and I'm grabbing a lot of your time here.
Yeah.
But thinking about then two things. One, first, I usually, like, when I'm talking to an older ministry guy, I say, okay, talk to your 19-year-old self, but your 19-year-old self isn't that far behind. So
a year ago.
There you go. So advice for if you went back and had the opportunity to talk to 16-year-old Luke.
Oh,
what are one or two things you'd say, okay, dude, here's some things I want you to see, know, connect with. Here's some advice that will accelerate where you're at and where you're headed.
Yeah. That's I've never been asked that question, because I think that is a question that's usually reserved for older gentlemen, you know. But it's funny enough that you say that, because something I told my team last night, as I said, hey, as the gospel is being preached, look out in the crowd and picture your face before you knew Jesus, and let that motivate you. And I think if I could go back and talk to 16-year-old Luke, I would tell him two things. I would say, the things of the world are not worth it. And I would say, take a leap of faith, step out from your parents' shadows, because just like he has that abundant life, you know, he really does. You know, probably say, like, he's not lying the Bible's not lying when it says he gives you abundant life. Like, it's really the only way to live a joyful life. Truly, because, you know, 16-year-old Luke was trying to do things by himself, and it exhausted him. And 20-year-old Luke is sometimes still trying to do things by himself, and it's exhausting. But I'm a little bit, not a little bit, I'm a lot more joyful now than when I was 16, for this one fact that I have Jesus in my life. So,
you know, and that's a message. I feel like, I mean, I've got kids that are, one that's a little bit older than you, one that's your age, and then two boys coming up behind in high school. And you watch the way they process the world at those key stages, moving through life. And there's so much, I think, in your every generation, but your generation, what I call the thin candy shell of life, right? You know, with no chocolate in the middle. And there's this chase for what's presented, that thin candy shell. And until there's some chocolate inside, you know, you're chasing and chasing. And then all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, there's nothing inside. Once you kind of get down that, and then that turns, if you get to that point, that turns you into a place of either hopelessness or redirecting your heart to hope. And I think your generation is powerful and creative and has energy and is just waiting for the chocolate to, you know, to kind of grab onto that chocolate.
Yeah. Well, if you mind me saying one more thing,
no.
I think if you're like, I don't know your demographic who's watching a podcast like this, but, I think one thing about Gen Z is, like, especially 16-year-old Luke and 20-year-old Luke can attest to this. Like, Gen Z wants the truth, you know. They're hungry. They're thirsty for knowledge. They're not a generation that is for lack of better words, like, dumb, you know. They want the truth, and they need people to tell them the harsh realities, you know, with grace and love, you know. No one wants to be yelled at and told that they're dumb, but Gen Z is thirsty for knowledge. They're thirsty for the gospel of Christ, and they need people that are gonna give it to them, but deliver it to them with tact, and deliver it to them at their level. You know, this generation's changing every day, and the things of the past, they need to be changed sometimes, and the way we go about ministry now needs to be relooked at, because Gen Z is now getting older, and we got Gen Alpha coming, so we got to get ready, you know. So, yeah.
Well, I for one am excited that you're part of that mix, and you have that perspective and the energy, and the heart for the Lord that's chasing after that. And so, I mean, part of my, you get to my age, and I'll be 50 this year, and you start thinking, okay, we're responsible for a lot. We carry a lot of levers because that's the stage in life we're at, organizationally, in movements, etc. But at this point, our job is not just to tell you the truth, but to give you all the runway in the world to get that running start to go. And that's a part that's fun for me. Is I look at the trajectory of your life and my kids and others that are in the ecosystem and say, oh man, God's got something not just interesting, but like on fire in your generation. And it's going to be really fun, I think, for the rest of us to have said, okay, we can do some paving. We can, block and tackle a little bit and let you guys run the ball and go after stuff. So
that's the perfect explanation. Paving. Love it.
Awesome. So, all right, last thing in just a couple of minutes. You got the internship this year and one more year, if I remember correctly. You got 2 years of internship. I know you said, God kind of leads you a year at a time, but do you have a vision yet for the trajectory, the line where he's taken you the next 10 years?
Maybe 2 months ago, I would have had like a better answer to that. Literally though, in the last 2 weeks, the Lord has wrecked me and just said, "What? Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Like, just be where your feet are. Be content." But to give you some type of answer, I have a passion for discipleship, and I eventually have the desire to teach and preach. Right now, the Lord has opened up a couple opportunities for me to practice preaching and teaching. But I think the Lord still has a lot that He wants to work on in my individual walk with Him before He puts me on the platform of teaching and preaching. Because the Lord, I definitely feel like the Lord is protecting me right now, because He understands that as soon as I step on stage with a Bible, the devil's going to work 10 times harder against me, and I'm going to be giving an account for how I led the people in front of me. And so, I think in the next 10 years, if I look 10 years down the line, I pray that the Lord has led me to some type of consistent teaching and preaching, whether that be at a church or a parachurch organization. My hands are open. I have a desire for college ministry. I have a desire for high school ministry, middle school ministry. I'm willing to go wherever the Lord wants me. So 10 years from now, I could either be doing college, high school, middle school, camp. But I just pray that I'm following the Lord faithfully 10 years from now, doing whatever He wants me to do. So
awesome. Cool. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for snow camp in now an hour and 20 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
If my calculations are right.
Oh, crazy. Yeah, I'll be praying for that. That's exciting stuff. Exciting.
Will do. Well, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for the opportunity to just be a little part of the journey and what the story God is writing in your life. And, excited to be part of that and just see where that goes.
Thank you so much for having a program that's so beneficial to my spiritual life. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, have a great weekend and snow camp season, and we'll catch up with you later on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Awesome.
Take care, Luke.
Bye.